So we will be recording. We will also be posting a YouTube link. So I will be sending that out with the PDF of the slides so that you will be able to listen to this and watch this later. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. So let us get started. We are scheduled for 60 minutes. Please keep your microphone muted and your camera off just to conserve bandwidth. We do have, I know folks from all over the country here. Some of us are more urban areas. Some of us are in more rural areas. And so we have a great variety of internet connectivity ability. So we just try to keep cameras off to conserve that bandwidth. Please type your questions in the chat as you have them. I will have I will try to incorporate answers to them as we move along. If I've missed any at the end, try to make some time to be able to talk about those and make sure we get those answered. And yes, we will be recording the meeting for future review. So let's get started. We're gonna start in talking about what is compliance. And I know this is an event review call, but at its core, compliance is all about making sure that things are happening according to program guidelines. And event review is a very big, important part of that. We'll also talk about the definition of fraud and some types of fraud. We're going to discuss some common issues in event review, entering falsified information into RC Care, what you should do if something doesn't feel right, how to file a suspicious case report, talk about the compliance structure, including document reviewers and event reviewers. We're going to talk about knowledge base articles that are upcoming and that currently exist, discuss some optional, have some optional external resources, and then I will have the link to the My Actions office hours. So let us begin with what is compliance. And if you don't mind, make sure that your cameras are off and your microphones are muted so we can conserve bandwidth. Want to make sure audio quality is as good as possible. I am one of those folks on rural internet here in Oklahoma, so sometimes my audio gets a little dicey. And Malachi, I see that you're on. If my audio starts to get iffy, will you please shout at me?
Absolutely, at the top of my lungs.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, as I said before, compliance is all about ensuring that cases follow program guidelines, upholding financial controls and separation of duties, identifying potential vulnerabilities. And this is one place that event review is a really, really, really big part of this process. Because if you are trying to confirm an event and you find out, wait a sec, we have a group of events here that we cannot confirm, that is a potential vulnerability that we need to make sure it gets reported. By having reviewers, compliance reviewers, document reviewers, and event reviewers, we work together to mitigate against fraud. When we detect fraud, we also work to report that fraud. But everything that we do is iterative. It's constantly evolving. Bad actors, people who perpetrate fraud, are not going to choose one way of doing things and do it forever. Unfortunately, most of those folks don't really have much better to do than to scam organizations. So as a result, we are, can you see my screen now? Apparently it didn't share correctly. Thank you. Thank you, Jim and Julie. Woohoo. Okay. Hopefully that's all the tech wrinkles we have. But compliance is iterative, evolving, and so we have to change with it because we need to keep pace with perpetrators of fraud, and we need to do our best to stay ahead of them so that they aren't able to scam our organization. I pulled this out of the event confirmation job tool. I know we have a number of new reviewers out there. So, just for the basics, if you're doing an event confirmation using fire department, police department, 911 dispatch, tribal official, or any other emergency response agency, you can review a dispatch log to kind of see who might have had jurisdiction in that space. If you don't know, like RC View, RC Respond, or no, this is a bit outdated. One of the things we'll talk about is how we're updating this. And call the local agency to confirm the event. It is not enough to just copy and paste the information out of RC Respond. If you yourself did not do the confirmation as an event reviewer, or if an event reviewer did not do the confirmation, it's not a valid confirmation. You can't just copy and paste what the duty officer put in there. So please be mindful of that. We need the at least name and or badge number and then of the person who did the confirmation and the name of the agency for these types of event confirmations. For media, look online for a reputable independent source. So like an individual's personal Facebook page is not an independent source. However, if there's a local news station that has, say, a Twitter account or a Facebook account that is independent of that fire and they're reporting it, you can use that. You can also use, newspapers that are posted online and things like that. But you do need to have a web link that you can post in the event confirmation. So I know this is a lot in a very small box, but this is kind of the basics of what event confirmation is. And we periodically see issues with the copying and pasting out of RC Respond. So if you are doing that, or if you've been instructed to do that, please don't. And please push back on that, because that opens us up to vulnerability to fraud. Now, if you cannot confirm an event, we'll talk about what to do with that. Some of those may be related to not being able to get a hold of the right officials. Some of them may be due to not being able to have the correct event date. So if the wrong event is on a case, or a case is on the wrong event in RC Care, you may not get the correct event date. So that is something that comes up periodically. And if you're noting that, please elevate that to your supervisor, because then there may be some events that need to get merged. And of course, I've mentioned the issue of copying and pasting into RC Respond. So, or from RC Respond rather. And this is a lot. It's a very quiet group in the chat. So if you cannot confirm with a fire department, police department, 911 dispatch, or tribal agency, or other official agency, look for media. Sometimes we've encountered, particularly here recently, a number of event reviewers who were a little bit concerned about using media. It is okay to use media for event confirmation. I will also say that if there are 2 responders on the case and 2 people confirm ID or address or damage, the event will automatically be confirmed. And once that happens, it will come out of your list. Julie asks, should the event reviewer be putting notes in the case in reference to missing documents that are not event related? Julie, could you send me some case numbers offline so we can take a look at those? Thank you. Because in general, most of the time, the event reviewers are looking at my actions just to see what it is that they need to confirm. Policy using weather reports. John, that's a great question. If it is media and if it refers to damage in a particular area from a compliance standpoint, I have no problem with it. Now, if it just says, hey, there was a chance of rain here, okay, then we've got a problem. Tornado report for an area, absolutely. That's totally fine. Thank you for that clarifying thing. Because yes, that would count as a reputable independent media source. I've seen, big thunderstorm causes straight line wind damage in Stillwater, Oklahoma, which is where I live. We recently had a little bit of that going on. And so something like that might be able to be used, even if it's from something like the National Weather Service. Now, Lynn, you have a question?
Nope, sorry, I guess I hit the wrong button.
Oh, no problem. So, if there is not, if you cannot get confirmation from, an agency, you cannot find media. If there's two responders and they both confirm ID or address or damage, that'll confirm the event and it'll take care of it for you. So really, the ones we're really worried about are the ones that have one responder. Now, there have been some recent changes to my actions, and I've got a link to the office hours about that, where you may be seeing an uptick in the number of cases coming to your queue. Loretta asks, are my actions system generated, manually requested, or both? Those are system generated. Jim, are you asking about
Chris?
I'm not seeing hands. Why am I not seeing hands? Just seeing the chat. What the heck? Let me expand this out so I can see hands. Sarah, you have a question?
Yeah, in the case it says if there are two responders on the case and they confirm something, ID, whatever.
Oh, Jim, go ahead.
Seems that I've seen cases come, I mean, would that even show up on our screen? Would we be assigned those if they had two responders?
If the two responders did not do, for example, if they did not both confirm damage during intake and ID and address were confirmed by GIACT already, so they didn't have to do those confirmations, you would see them. So if they have not done confirmations for both of the, if two responders have not confirmed ID or address or damage, then they will show up. Now, if there's something in my actions for a responder to do and they do it, then it will pull it out of your queue.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Sarah, you had a question?
Yeah, in my response area, they don't always like to give like their badge number or name, but they'll give an incident number. Are we allowed to put that in as well as like the agency, like a fire incident number or response number?
Let me take that one for homework. Can we connect offline kind of to focus
Absolutely.
on where those, yeah,
Yeah,
if
a run number, incident number, yeah, either one of those.
right. Yeah, if we're having issues in the field with those types of things, it may be something that like we at NHQ kind of need to revisit. a little bit and talk about and take that feedback. The one concern I have is that we have seen people take the incident number out of RC Respond and just copy and paste it, which is the one, and I'm not saying you're doing that. I don't have any, the data do not indicate that. But that's my one concern. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I just live in a very populated, I guess, busy area, if you might put it, and they'll just
Okay.
say, here's the run number for that, if you can give me the address, like when you call. So,
Okay,
they will do
yeah.
that instead.
Let's
So I've
connect
been I'll
offline.
put that, and if I can get their name, I'll do
Okay.
that too. So I try to do their name and
Okay.
like the phone number and incident number, but yeah, we can go
Yeah.
offline. And then I did have another one too, and you
Sure.
might be getting to it later. But I guess clearing. So like if they're past the time of they've already been closed. It does not allow you to select not confirmed. There's not an option to do that. So if the case has already been closed in RC Care, it does not let you go and select that the case cannot be confirmed. It just sits in the queue.
We're working on fixing that.
All right, that was another question. So, thank you.
Yes. Doug, you have a question.
So my question is that when a DAT responder does a call, it's local, right? So then the question is, what if we
Generally,
get
yes.
one that it's been on a DR and it slips in your event reviewer? I didn't confirm it last night, but I had 2 go in there, and we got, some reason they got out of there by this morning before time to ask the question. But we're not supposed to confirm anything or confirm an event from a DR, are we?
For DRs, the events should automatically be confirmed. So if you see cases, that's a great question. If you see cases that come into your queues for DRs, please send, and I'll put my contact number or contact info in the chat. Please send them my way, send them the direction of client care help. And so we can look at those, because those events should automatically have the event confirmed. So those shouldn't be showing up for you. Thank you for
Chris-
flagging that.
Chris, can I just add that we actually do have there is a checkbox on the event that an event administrator can check that would turn off that automatic confirmation. In our attempts to make RC Care as customizable, just because we don't know what kind of events we may have in the future, there may be a level 2 that for some reason we've decided every case needs an event confirmation. Things like that. I have seen 2 separate events in this calendar year, actually, where the regional event administrator keeps unchecking that, or keeps checking that box to override the event confirmation, meaning that they show up for the event reviewers to confirm. I don't think the regional event administrators mean to do that. I think they are just confused. And so in all those times I have rechecked or unchecked the box, and it's confirmed all the events again. So I'm guessing that when you've seen those 2 DRO cases, it is because the regional event administrator just checked that box and didn't override, and they didn't mean to, and then we fixed it. So yes, if you do see it, please email and let us know, but it's not really the system broken. It is most likely just somebody clicked a wayward box that they did not mean to check.
Yeah, and thank you, Jamie. That was
Okay.
kind of the direction I was trying to go. But yes, yeah, so far we haven't had an instance where they should be showing up for you. But like Jamie said, there's, we wanted the system to be as flexible as possible, because we don't know that, someday there may be an event that for, like a level 2 where they have to be, we want to have every case have an event confirmation on its own. So yeah, if you see those, chances are you shouldn't be seeing those. And, we just need to work on getting that box unchecked, and that will take care of it.
Okay, well, and then my second question is that we got, I mean, I don't think they mean to do it. They come in my queue and there's no way to confirm it. So then I send it up the chain of command and not confirm it, right? And then what ended up happening is, and I got two of them still in my queue. One's a year old and the other one's 6 months old. And I hit the checkbox. I could not confirm it any way, shape, or form because the reason why I couldn't confirm it because the deal said there was a grill in one of the houses and the fire, nobody was living in there, but they had a ticket open on there. So I didn't, and then I put the reason why in. But then when I did that, some of them will just stay in my box. Now I got one that's been a year ago, and then I got another one that's been in December. Them two I denied, and they're still in my box. How do you get rid of them?
We're doing some system updates for event reviewers, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about them today. We're going to talk about them a lot more on our next call next month. But to try to kind of filter those older cases out, if you could send me those two case numbers, I'll take a look.
Okay, yep. Sorry about all the questions, but I was just
know
curious.
that we've got some. Yeah, no. That's why we're having these calls. You know, to be able to give members of the review teams a chance to like ask questions and get together and see, you know, what's going on and maybe what challenges other people are facing and what things have worked and all that. So, Alvin, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. So when I've run into the case of a DRO event showing up in my queue, I usually just let Brian Ellis know, and he goes in and does whatever magic he does, and they all disappear. I found that if I ignore them for the rest of the day, they usually get taken out eventually, but otherwise I let Brian know, and he takes care of them for me. I've probably had in the last month and a half, maybe 6 or 8 of them. So, but Brian takes care of them and I don't have to do anything.
Okay, thank you for that. Have a question in the chat about using Pulse Point. It's a great question. In theory, you could use Pulse Point, basically like a media source, as long as it had all the required information. Unfortunately, we know in some areas, the information that comes through on Pulse Point is iffy. The data are pretty incomplete. So if you use Pulse Point, make sure that it is giving you the information you need to be able to confidently confirm that event. You know, so I'm not saying no, but I'm saying just handle it with a little caution. Georgia, does that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, Sarah. When other is checked, it gets escalated. For like local EM. That one is an interesting one. Because I think in the example that you gave, we were thinking mostly in terms of like that the emergency management folks would be lumped in with fire department, police department, 911 dispatch. And so it's possible that we may need, again, to take some feedback back and take a look at the labels that we have on those. The reason why other gets escalated is because most instances of other are truly unusual confirmations, where they get escalated to compliance just for another set of eyes to make sure that, hey, everything's okay. Because typically when other gets used, it's not like emergency management folks. It's people like community leaders that aren't one of these agencies, but that know the client well, where we've exhausted absolutely everything else, where we're in an unusual situation with a very vulnerable client, but vulnerability, our vulnerable clients and our perpetrators of fraud often look very similar on paper. So we just try to look at those unusual situations, just give them a second look just to be sure everything is good. Doug, do
No,
you have
thanks, Krista.
another question?
I was gonna say that
Oh,
was helpful.
go ahead,
Krista,
sir.
Because, I know emergency manager is not listed. I never thought to list them under, fire department, police department, so.
Yeah, if you list them under one of those and just like put emergency manager, you're going to be fine.
Okay.
Other is really that, and that's a great point. We'll take a look at like the labels and things, but other is really for that super unusual stuff where we've tried everything else. We've tried all of our agency partners. There's no media, there's no agency partners that can help us. We had to use something else or someone else to try to get to yes for a client who really needed our help. Let me see. Kimberly, yes, that's a great great comment about LAFD alert. It comes directly from LAFD, doesn't it?
Yes, Chris, it does.
Okay, excellent. For those, if you have old cases in My Actions, like I said, if you want to try to get help clearing them, if you need help trying to find event confirmation, you can let us know on the compliance analyst team. All of us have done many, many, many event verifications in the days of fiscal review. So we're pretty handy at that. And so if you want to send them my way, would be happy to try to assist. But for those that simply cannot be confirmed and are just like sitting there, we are working on some system updates to get your queues cleaned up so you don't have to keep like just sitting there. Rick, to your point, for vacates, if the vacate has been authorized by city officials, you can still use a city official. You can use an agency. You don't have to use other. We would probably lump them in with like police department. Again, you're in Greater New York, correct?
Yep, Greater New York. It's usually Housing Preservation Department or the Department of Buildings that does the vacates, and I usually get the badge number and the name of the.
Okay. Yeah, I would say it's probably okay to go ahead and put them in with one of the emergency officials. Greater New York is perhaps the only region that deals with vacates. But we know that you have a program there for that. And so using those established officials that's not going to be something highly unusual for your region. That's just kind of part of what you all do there. And we will again go back and kind of take a look at our categories and just see how things are doing. So Doug, if your hand is stuck, please come off mute or stick something in the chat if you have a question. So if you start out looking, oops, I clicked one too fast. If you start out by looking for media and cannot find it, call the fire department, police department, 911 dispatch, tribal agency, or other official agency that may have responded to the event. Again, if there's 2 responders on the case that have confirmed ID, address, or damage, that event will automatically be confirmed in RC Care. Now, if they do not both enter their tokens for damage right now or do damage during intake, that won't confirm the event. It will just confirm the damage and they won't see it. And there's some more information about that in the RC Care office hours that I have linked a little bit later in the presentation. So let's talk fraud, shall we? So at its most basic, fraud is the falsification of information to benefit yourself or someone else. Bear in mind, sometimes that someone else is a client. It doesn't mean that there's criminal intent or there's malfeasance or anything like that. It can still be fraud. Now, the official definition from the Red Cross Office of Ethics and Compliance formally makes the definition as false statements, representations, or the concealment of material facts to obtain some benefit or payment for which no entitlement would otherwise exist. These acts may be committed either for the person's own benefit or the benefit of some other party. I know that is much more formal wording, but in case you need it, as you are working through event confirmations and understanding what fraud is and how event confirmation helps us to prevent fraud, having both of those is helpful. And that link there with the Office of Ethics and Compliance will take you to their webpage so that you can get more information from them. So if we enter false information into RC Care, even if it is not done with criminal intent, it is a form of fraud. Because if we put false information into RC Care, it is a falsification of Red Cross business records. Because RC Care is our case management system of record. Anything we put in there is a Red Cross business record. So, a responder providing their token to confirm ID or address that they didn't see themselves, that is an example of fraud. And that's one we see pretty frequently, actually, unfortunately. So responders who confirm ID and address need to see and do that confirmation either face-to-face or on video. Another example is entering event confirmation into RC Care by copying and pasting from RC Respond. We also occasionally see falsifying address confirmations by driver's license or state ID, where people will put in that the address was confirmed by driver's license when the address is something that would never have been printed on a driver's license. So, there's lots of other examples. Just be mindful as you're looking for things and kind of as you're reading through things, just kind of give it a reasonableness check. Like, does this look like it's real? In terms of major types of fraud, false claims are demands for money or property based on material falsehoods. One of the most common types of false claims that we see here at the American Red Cross is people making up events that did not occur. You all, event reviewers, are one of our first lines of defense against false claims. DAT responders are also on the front lines against false claims. Synthetic identities are identities that are fabricated, but they are generally based on a stolen piece of real information, such as a social security number. Identity thefts. Synthetic identity is a form of identity theft. Identity theft generally, though, involves stealing more of a person's identity for fraudulent purposes. Embezzlement is the fraudulent taking of personal property by someone to whom it was entrusted. Impersonation is a thing that has happened where someone is pretending to be a fire official, 911 dispatcher, even Red Cross responder in order to get sensitive data. This is part of the reason why we ask event reviewers to call fire departments as opposed to just taking the information out of RC Respond, because we have had instances where people have called in to 1-800 Red Cross and have impersonated fire officials. And so if you, an event reviewer, call what you know to be the fire department's phone number, and they say, what are you talking about? We didn't have a fire there. When we had a call from somebody who says they worked there, we generally find out they didn't work there. Then that is something that we can report and investigate very quickly. Julie brings up, we also see instances where more residences might be affected than actually affected. So we have on the DAT side, we really stress confirmation that the disaster happened, that the client was affected in a way that would qualify for our assistance, that they can confirm their ID using one of our approved methods, and they can confirm their address using one of the approved methods. Alvin, that is a great question. When you have fire department, police department confirm an address that is different than what is listed, how much leeway do we have? If we confirm an address, 1235 Main Street, and the event lists the address as 1224 Main Street. One of the things to note, and this is a fantastic question, I'm super glad you asked it, is that often fire departments will store the calls under the address that where the call came from, not necessarily the house that burned. And so if, like, my house is burning and my next door neighbor calls it in, then that call may be associated with her address, not with mine. So you do have a bit of leeway. If you have a question, it is okay to ask, hey, is this where the fire took place, or is this where the call came in from? When in doubt, ask the question. We've been very fortunate to have some great relationships with our fire officials, and frequently they will tell you that kind of thing. Ken, do you have a question?
I have a comment. I've had it
Yes,
happen
please do.
that there's multiple buildings and they only record one address, and sometimes the address is on a different street.
Yes, that is an excellent one. Like corner addresses.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes. It is okay to sit down with the Google Maps and kind of look, and if what they give you is on one corner and what you have is just around the corner, but it's the same spot, you're gonna be okay. But that's an excellent question. Jim, do you have a question?
Yeah, I've done several hundred of these, and maybe a dozen where the addresses are wrong, and always work it out just as you suggest. My question is, I try to annotate the case somehow because now we have an official agency. In my case, usually the fire department or sheriff's office, something like that. And that is not consistent with what's on the form that the DAT responder uses. Is that the right place to do it? Is to annotate the card with the case on it?
Never a bad thing to add your documentation, because if something were to happen, and say that case were suspected of fraud for whatever reason, if that case is suspected of fraud, then Frank Favilla, our chief investigator, and I will go and take a look at that case. And we love when we find documentation, because if we can see, oh, hey, event reviewer Jim Williams talked to these folks at the fire department, and this is what they told Jim, we'll probably loop you into the discussion and say, hey, can you walk us through, like, is this where the fire allegedly took place, or is this the neighbor, or what? And kind of have a collaborative discussion, and then use your documentation to then get more information from the fire department and continue with the investigation. So, oh yes, documentation is beautiful. Love some documentation. Thank you for that. Sarah asks, how do we upload documentation? You can just type it into the event confirmation. Loretta, that's a great point. Yes, some buildings with multiple entrances do have different addresses. And so if you pull up a map and it's in the right spot geographically, then you're going to be okay. Yes, Lori, if you are in, very, very rural area, very, very small town, yes, you can use media like that. Because sometimes in those rural areas, our media markets may not give a whole bunch of information, but in a really small town, they're probably not going to have a whole bunch of house fires. And Alvin, you're exactly right. RV trailers in the driveway can indeed cause address issues. That said, unless there's like a unit number there, treat them just, call for question and just ask about where the fire is, because odds are good that the fire department is not going to say, well, the driveway is unit 1 versus the house, which is unit 0. But, if you run into problems or questions, feel free to holler. Absolutely. We also have occasional alteration of documents, and this is less of an issue for event reviewers, more of an issue for document reviewers, where we see document forgeries getting passed. There are people attempting to pass forgeries for real documents. We also have had some issues with compromised credentials. So just as a general like cybersecurity hygiene thing, make sure you log off your machine. We had a DAT responder get upset with another DAT responder, and the responder who was on the receiving end of the anger had saved her username and password in RC Care on her laptop. And so the person who was mad at her opened up a bunch of cases using her sign-on and framed her for fraud to the tune of about $10,000. So just be mindful about usernames, passwords, and kind of overall digital hygiene. Just, because the work that we do affects folks' eligibility for more money, like supplemental and things like that. So just kind of be mindful. We haven't seen any like big issues with event reviewers and that. It's just after that case that was a case that really affected me. And I never, ever, that was heartbreaking. I never want to see another person ever, especially a Red Crosser, ever have to go through that kind of heartbreak. That was awful. Ken, I said, feel free to holler. You can holler at me, or you can holler at client care, and they will holler at me. So either way, I've put emails in the chat. If you find something that feels like funny business, something is off, please file a suspicious case report. We used to ask folks to send one email with like all of these leadership folks here on this list, and no one could ever remember the entire distro. I mean, I could never remember the entire distro. And this way, if you file a suspicious case report, it's just a Microsoft form. It has a list of questions. You answer the questions, you hit submit, it generates the email for you and sends it out instantaneously. It'll be to all of these people within a matter of seconds. Also, you know, absolutely notify your supervisor, make sure that they're aware of what's going on. You can use the concern connection line to report any concerns about allegations of fraud, waste, abuse, illegal, unsafe, or unethical behavior. There's the web address and the phone. So at the divisional level, we have a client care compliance analyst team. We support regions, divisions, and large scale DROs. We also help develop new tools for event reviewers, for document reviewers. We also do due diligence and fraud mitigation workshops. We provide mentoring for new reviewers. It says compliance reviewers, but also document reviewers and event reviewers. The Office of Ethics and Compliance, kind of the investigative arm of compliance. They are the formal channel that you can use to report suspected wrongdoing using that concern connection line. They also work with law enforcement. At your regional level, all things compliance, including event and document review, accountability for those things rests on the shoulders of your RDO. So if you do not know your RDO, please get to know your RDO. And beyond the RDO, different regions have different different structures. So some may have direct services managers, some may have paid recovery leads, etc. So work with your RDO to establish a regional contact list so you know who to contact if there's additional information that's needed. Yes, Howard, we do know about the no notes that are on not confirmed. That is another thing we are working on fixing. And at our next call, I will have some updates, I hope. We know that the event confirmation job tool is kind of sorely out of date. It's still in draft form. We are working on moving that information into the knowledge base. There is a knowledge base article on event confirmation sources, but we need more articles. So please be thinking about what kind of knowledge articles would be helpful for you all. Please share those ideas with us so that way we can build some knowledge base articles that are going to be helpful and that we can have to be available for you to use. So hopefully I'll have some more updates about that on our next call as well. I periodically get asked for others, like external stuff, for people who want additional training. I know those of you who attended the compliance or the doc review call have already seen this, but if you're interested, this is utterly optional. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies has a series of classes on corruption prevention. And they're somewhat lengthy, and some of the material doesn't really apply to what we do here at the American Red Cross, such as working in conflict zones, but there is some good stuff there. And the classes are interesting. I found them to be really engaging. And so if you want some additional training and professional development, those are available for you. I will try to have like additional helpful resources on each of our calls so that for those folks who really want to like get their teeth into this type of work, that we're making sure you're provided with those tools. From the Federal Reserve, we also have a webinar about the fraud classifier, which helps provide background on the terminology about embezzlement and identity theft and synthetic identity and compromised credentials and things like that. And so if that is something that interests you, it's much more banking based, but by using those terms, it helps us speak the same language as our partners in the Office of General Counsel and also our partners in law enforcement who work in financial crimes. So we're all kind of speaking the same language and also speaking the same language as our payment vendors. If you have questions about the changes to my actions, they are available on the client care office hours. I apologize. I don't know why that says 4/6 from the 16th, but it is the most recent set of office hours. I apologize. I'll fix that typo. But there's the presentation and the video recording. Those are correct. They're available on the RC Care Toolkit. So if you've got folks that are asking about my actions, or if you see an uptick in things for event review, that may answer some of those questions. John, that is a great call out. Yes, a lot of the terms we're using around fraud are exactly the same terms used around insurance fraud. And particularly when we get into larger disaster response operations, having a shared terminology with some of those folks is also helpful. So our next call, and I'll send out the invite for that here after a little bit, will be on the 9th of May at 3 p.m. Central Time. Now, when I send out the invite, it will say 3 p.m. for me, but the invite will self-adjust to your time zone. So for you all in Pacific, it's going to say 1 p.m. For you in Eastern, it's going to say 4 p.m. So it will self-adjust. I'm sitting in Oklahoma, so it's 3 p.m. Central. We will talk about some system updates for event reviewers. We're going to talk about some knowledge-based article updates. And I would love it if you all have topics that are on your minds to please submit those so we can talk about kind of what's going on for you all in the field. I also have references for today's call. There's the RC Care Toolkit. You will find all of the office hours there. I also have the Code of Business Ethics and Conduct, the Event Confirmation Job Tool. I do know we have a number of new reviewers in here, so if you need that, you will have access to that. The Office of Ethics and Compliance Toolkit, and of course, the Suspicious Case Report. And yes, Kimberly, if you want to connect offline, I would be happy to connect with you. And so that is all I have. We've got about 6 minutes. Are there any other questions that anyone has? This has been a great call. I'm super excited about these calls. Well, hearing none, I'll stick around here for the next few minutes. But if you are good, you are more than welcome to sign off. Yes, Lori, I would be happy to connect with you offline as well. Kimberly, would it be okay if I call you after this call? And then Lori, can I call you after I call Kimberly? Rick, to answer your question, I do not think I have the ability to add your time to volunteer connection, but you certainly can. You absolutely can get credit for this meeting, 100%. Yes, Lori, if you want to stick around, that's totally fine too. I'll be here. But yes, have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.